how we see the world, and whether we're looking through the world through the eyes of Jesus or looking through the world through the eyes of our flesh, I think it's very important how we perceive this world. I was reading a story about a couple who was out of the hills of Tennessee, a little rural, small town, and they had desired to become missionaries. And they planned their life to one day go to some country and deliver the gospel. They were dead set on it, hungry, excited. And that's really usually what happened. You get really pumped up in the things of God. I think that when I first started in the ministry, I was so excited about everything, and then the reality kicked in. The reality kicked in. Boy, this is a real job for real. So, but they went over there to Africa. They had never, sometimes we think we know what being poor is, and sometimes many of us in America, we have never experienced poverty at the lowest level. And we really don't have an idea what other people may go through in this world when it comes to this thing called poverty. But they went there with the idea that they would be able to bring the answers to these people. When they got there, they didn't, like I said, they came from the hills of Tennessee, which wasn't rich or nothing like that. I'm sure you got the people in the Appalachians are poor, but there are people in the world worse off than the people in the Appalachians. And they had never viewed it like that. They had never seen poverty at that level and suffering. So they began to approach it from a typical American experience. Usually when we look at something, like we got in California, they got all them homeless people all over the streets and every place else. And we believe that if we can put enough money into that, we can change all that. Only to find out that even when you give them money, a lot of people still choose to be homeless. Because in America, we believe that if you want to fix a problem, all you need have is money. Money will fix all of our problems. But we're finding out that that is not true. We pump money into so many things, and none of that stuff is working. And then, no, I'm not going to even get in there. I'm not trying to be political or anything like that, but it's strange what we think money will do. Money will never get rid of poverty. I don't care how much money you pump into it. Because poverty is not about money. Most of the time it's about mentality. People are not rich because of money. I know a lot of rich poor people. Yeah, you're going to always have that because basically most people think if they had money, they wouldn't be in poverty. But I can give people who have a poverty mentality money, and they be in poverty tomorrow. Because poverty is not about how much money you have. Matter of fact, even Jesus mentioned, he said, your life does not consist of the things that you possess. So even he allows you to understand is that the poor, you're going to always have that. You're not going to get rid of that. You can't give enough money to that because the poor man don't even know what to do. People with a poverty mentality will never know what to do with money. That's why they're in poverty a lot of times. But again, so he thought it would be solved if he just had the money. If we just had money, I see that a lot. People having great causes, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to denigrate their efforts or anything like that. And I do feel, because, see, I know what it is to be hungry, and I know what it is to be without. I understand that. And it hurts me to see anybody. I may not give you money, but it's one thing I will always give you as long as I'm eating. You will have food. Because there's nothing more painful in this world than to be hungry. But you've never been hungry, you don't know that. But there's not any feeling you'll ever have that's more sickening than a hunger pain. So I do have a little understanding of hunger. Now, I haven't hungered for many, many days, but I have been in a place where I didn't have food, and I had to go for a while. That was real bad on me. So I do have a heart. When I see hungry people, I want to make sure they get something to eat. I'll buy them something to eat. I just don't give them money. I would rather give you food. But anyway, they thought maybe if they could just get these people some money, just raise some money, feed the hungry. And what they found out, they did that. But instead of creating a church, they created a social gathering. Till after a while, Jesus was not the focus. Because now they're just focusing on doing one thing, raising money and putting it into this project. Not against it, not talking against it, but I think sometimes money has messed us up. Because we would rather give money than give what Jesus requires. You know, I used to buy my kids off with money. You know what I regret today? That I would have kept the money and gave them my time. Yeah. I wish I'd have gave them more of my time, but I gave them money. I'd rather give them money just to leave me alone. And that was, but it comes back. One thing I love about life, you will learn more when you fail than you do when you achieve. And failure is not fatal when you recognize where you failed. Not only that, is that then you're able to teach others, don't make this mistake. Somebody had to do it so they can tell somebody, I made a big mistake in that part. Love my kids, but I didn't give them the time they should have had. Time is one thing you cannot buy. Money you can make anytime. You can get it anywhere. So they didn't have, even though they were able to feed them, but still the money did not bring the answers that they thought would happen for them. And I think as we look in the Bible, I hate to teach stuff like this sometimes because people want to misunderstand what I'm saying. And I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying. I don't believe that God wants you out here just groping around, begging with a cup. I don't believe God gets upset with you if you made $1 million a week. I don't think God cares if you make $300 million a day. That's not what I'm talking about. Sometimes when you begin to teach from his perspective, it almost seems like you're supposed to be real poor. Now, I do admit, he does have a lot of things to say about the rich man, but I don't think he was angry with the rich man. But we'll look at that a little bit later because I notice all his, David, Solomon, Abraham, all these guys were real rich. They didn't start rich, but except for Solomon, he inherited his, but the rest of them grew to become rich. And I think there's nothing wrong with growing. When we grow in the grace and knowledge of God and let God always be in the center, I think we can't go wrong. There's nothing wrong with amassing, and getting what God has coming for you. But we always have to keep in mind, why is that me? I've been one of the most blessed people that I know. I'll tell anybody that. I know God has blessed me in more ways than one. I'm not just talking about money. I'm not going to leave no mansions. But God has blessed me, and I'm so thankful for that. But I want to make sure that I always keep the right attitude because I know how things can change. I know how things changed in my own life. And I don't want things to change in your life understanding God, get what God has for you, because what he has is yours. But in Luke chapter 16, we're going to read, and then we're going to look at how Jesus would see the world. Because, see, I believe if the early church, they didn't have money to give. All they had to give was Jesus. You remember Peter and them when they go into the set silver and man, and they were going to church, and they didn't have no silver and gold, but it said such as we have. See, I want to be in the place where let me give you something that really counts. Let me give you something that will change you. Money, if you thinking poor when you get money, you're still thinking poor after you get money. I've watched too many people, stimulus checks. They're, claiming, man, I can't wait to get that stimulus check, man. I'm going to go over here and do this and do that. Can't wait to be broke. See, that's not the way I live. I don't live like that. I don't like to see. They almost remind me of the gamblers that go to the casinos. It's all or nothing. They go, I got one more dollar. Where can I put this at? One more dollar. No. And I hear all this, see, and I begin to wonder, why would you, knowing what you know, you're telling me these are pandemic times, uncertain times, why would you want to go and just get broke? I would think, you keep a spare tire in case. See, I always believe keep $100 in the bank in case you have to leave town. You at least got a tank of gas. That's where I live. I keep $100 somewhere. So if I have to leave, I at least got a tank of gas. But here you are. You were in a pandemic. And now you're talking about the money you got. You're going to spend it all in one place. I don't understand that one. Okay. But anyway, Jesus always knows our hearts. We can't even get around him. Can't fool him. Can't trick him. And I loved it when Jesus always get in the crowd of these guys who was trying to always pick him apart. And he always seemed to have answers. He would be talking to them without talking to them, but they know they're being talked to. That's what I love about Jesus, is that he talked to you without talking to you, but you knew he was talking to you. Somehow or another, he had that ability to say the things that you thought he didn't know, that only you knew, and then you had to keep a straight face while he's talking about it, and you knew all the while he's talking about you. He was very good at that, I mean, so in here, 16:14, well, we talked about before, 13, where no servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one, love the other, else will he hold to the one, despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. But in verse 14 said, and the Pharisees also, who were covetous, heard all these things, and they derided him. In other words, they're listening to him. This thing had come down to a point where they knew he was talking about them and opening their hearts up, and so they immediately wanted to rebuff him for his statements. Because, see, you got to understand a lot of times when we read the Bible, we try to read it from an American mindset. But this Bible had to be understood from a Hebrew standpoint. They understood things from their culture when he spoke to them that you would not understand right now because you're trying to bring it over here. No, back in that day, they understood exactly what he was saying. They could understand the reasoning behind what he was saying. Today, we don't have the same Hebrewic mindset. Even when reading the Old Covenant, there's a lot of things in there we don't understand. It don't make sense to us. And so we'll gloss over those things because they don't make sense into our culture. And so we'll just say that's not a part of our culture. But one of the things, in order to fully and truly understand the Bible, you need to understand their thought process even in the day when they were receiving this word, because he's got to talk to them in a language that they're going to understand. If he tells them something about the moon, they ain't never been there. They wouldn't understand that. But he got to talk to them in a language that they would understand. So, and he said unto them, ye are they which justify yourself before men. Right? Because, see, part of their teaching, and it was rightfully so, scripturally sound, was that they were to be blessed. Part of being in the covenant of God was that you were going to be blessed materially. And so they understood that to be what they call a witness to God, a witness for God, that they had to be blessed. Materially, yes, definitely yes, because it spoke volumes to people. If they saw you and you were dressed in a backpack suit and everything, they knew you were blessed. So they lived a life showing that they were blessed by what they had. See, so, but what, let me keep reading here just a minute. But God knoweth your heart, for that which is highly esteemed among men is an abomination in the sight of God. I think we fail to realize that, because we do look for being esteemed, highly esteemed. We look for all the things that God says in the abomination to him, because when they begin to tell you how good you are, you're probably not doing that well. But yet, we look for that. As human beings, we want to be esteemed. We want to be honored. We want to, if we got it, we want people to know we have it. If we have arrived, we want people to know we have arrived. You see, I couldn't have $5 million in the bank and drive a 2003 Lincoln Town Car. That does not fit, would it? It wouldn't fit. There's no way I could have that much money in the bank and be satisfied with that 03. I can already see myself now. I got to get something to fit that $5 million. Oh, no, money wouldn't change me. Yes, it will. You'll see a lot of things. If you got a lot of money, you'll see a lot of things you wouldn't see if you didn't. It opened your eyes to stuff that you never got open to. You know, to me, and now maybe it's just me. See, there's a lot of things I didn't know was out there until I got enough money to go to places where they sold it. Because the stores I shopped at didn't have it. When I got more money, I was able to go into places that I knew I couldn't go in when I didn't have it. And so I was exposed. You know, I didn't eat lobsters when I was growing up. I had to make some money one day until I finally got enough money where I can go in one of them places. See, McDonald's didn't sell it. Kentucky Fried Chicken didn't sell it. I had to get in a place, had to go to a place one day that sold that. And then when I got exposed to that, guess what? I got exposed to other things. Jumbo shrimps. Never seen them things before. I said, wow. Now, if I'd have stayed poor, I probably would never got exposed to that. Right? So what I'm saying is that many people will tell you up front, man, money don't change me. It will change you. It will change you. It should change you. It should change you in a lot of ways. Not for the worse, but for the best. It should open your eyes to a lot of things, but most of the time it don't. You'll open our eyes to us and what I can get out of this. So Jesus is talking about this here. He said, the law and the prophet was until John. Since that time, the kingdom of God is preached, and every man pressed into it. Easy for the camel, easy for heaven and earth to pass, than one little tittle of the law to fail. And whosoever put away his wife, married another. Who's put away his wife and married another committed adultery. And whosoever married her that put away from her husband committed adultery. Then he says, here's Jesus now. He does what I call situational teaching. He loves to get you in a situation and then have a Bible class. It's called situational teaching. It's just like when I raised my kids, that's what I used to have, situational teaching. They do something stupid. I don't just want to whoop them. I don't want to just beat them. I want to teach them something in the midst of this. They need to see why and how and all that. But if I just went in and started knocking them upside the head or something, they're not going to understand why. So Jesus usually had mercy on people, and he would do what they call situational teaching. It's just like when he got a chance to talk about the sower sowed the seeds. You know, that's situational teaching. Some of them had ideas about how to farm, but he wants to show them a higher level of farming using situational teaching. The Samaritan on the road, Jericho road, helping a man who was beat, situational teaching. So here again, he uses this situation to teach. He says, there was a certain rich man. Didn't say who he was. Sure, it could fit anybody. Could fit any of us tonight probably, because we may not think we're rich here, but we're rich. I mean, in America, if you've never been outside this country, you don't know that, but I've been outside this country. I'm going to tell you right now, the only way you're going to get me out of this country, you'll see my fingernails in all of the pavement. I ain't going. When I touched down at LaGuardia Airport, I wanted to kiss the ground. I was so glad to be back. Okay, this is me here. But anyway, he said there was a certain rich man, which was clothed in purple and in fine linen, fared sumptuously every day. Do you see any sin in there? I mean, honestly, no. Nor does God even mention or say in any kind of way the man was sinful. But he makes this statement about this rich man, how he was dressed in purple, fine linen, fared sumptuously every day, ate lobsters, and shrimp, all kind of things like that, ribeye, prime rib, that Wagyu steak, all that stuff. He was doing good, ate good. But then it goes to the next verse. And there was a certain beggar, and named Lazarus, which was laid at the gate full of sores. Did he commit a sin? No. Didn't mention nothing about that, did he? Didn't say sin or nothing. Two people, one rich, one's a beggar. And at the onset here, it doesn't necessarily say or even imply that somebody was so sinful. So let's go a little further. He was full of sores, desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. So, was a rich man at fault? Because the beggar desired to eat the crumbs? No, I don't know. Let's just keep going. It came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And in hell he lifted up his eyes, being in torment, seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in the bosom. He cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented by flame. But Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in thy lifetime receivest good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that they would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that would come from thence. But I'm looking at this and trying to dissect it now, because it becomes very dangerous, because it almost makes you look like God don't want you to wear nice clothes. And it almost looked like you would be better served if you could find somebody crumbs you could find. That's what it looked like. But I don't think that's what's really being said at all. I don't think he's even trying to insinuate that. But I do believe that as the Jews thought, material blessing qualified them to be called the people of God. I think that they focused their priorities wrong. I think this rich man's priorities became wrong because I think his focus was on himself and only upon himself. And I think that after a while, if you ever live well, you don't want to live less than well. So your priorities begin to change because you want to make sure that if I'm living well, guess what my priority is going to be? If I have to make a choice, I'm going to want to keep living well. And I may step over a lot of people that I could have helped, but I can't mess up my lifestyle to help someone else, right? I can't let them crumble my kingdom trying to help them. So I think God's primary focus has always been and always will be people. And no matter how we try to dance around it, his focus will always be people. You can't get saved without being in people's business, because his focus and priority is about people. It's not just personal. I believe in the personal God. I believe in personal everything with God. But I do know the purpose of God for my salvation is about people. Matter of fact, he even talks about when he saved you, he reconciled you unto himself to make you ministers of reconciliation, which tells me that he's all about people in your life. You're about reconciling people in your life, trying to get people reconciled. Not just to God, but there's a lot of reconciliation to be done in families. Bringing families back together. You should be the one who brings peace. Everybody else is arguing. You should be the reconciler. You know, I have had to stand in many family feuds. And, you know, one of the things that's bad when you're in a family feud is that you got to make sure you're trying to make peace, because if one side think you're siding with them, then they're mad at you. Oh, I thought you were going to take my side. But see, being consistent with God will give you the privilege of being able to be heard when you become a reconciler. They know that you're not going to side with nothing but God. I think that's why it's important that we know that we got Jesus in us like that, because it wouldn't matter if my mother was wrong. I don't side with family. I don't side with anyone but Jesus. Period. He's right all the time. But one of the things is that he's not judging this man. The rich man is not being judged or condemned for what he did, but what he was. What was this man? What was wrong with this man? It's quite evident. He's very selfish. He really only cared about himself. Even in death, the first thing he wants is what he had money to buy in his first life. But I bet you didn't see value in money then, a value in water. I bet you never thought water would mean so much. And see, that's just like God, is that he blessed us all. What he said, rains on the just and the unjust. And a lot of times we do not appreciate the rain that comes. Here's a man now, he is thinking how valuable something so freely given, water, if I could just have a drop of that. That's the reason why I know that his whole mannerism in this parable is that he was very selfish. Yes, he made sure he had on purple, and they tell me at the time, in that day and time, purple was very, very expensive because the shell they got it from was rare. You had to go far and wide to get that shell, get that purple out of some seashell they got in the sea or something. And so purple was not cheap. His linen was not cheap. Everything about him was not cheap. Could he live? Could God have blessed him? Still, he was blessed. But he didn't know what to do with it. He ignored things that was important to God. And sometimes when we get so selfish that we can only see ourselves, we miss the priorities of God, especially ministering to those that he have around you that you should be ministering to. Praise God. So we know the Pharisees didn't think a lot about Jesus because of where he was from. They made it a point to say this is Jesus of Nazareth. Well, Nazareth was one of those little towns like Booty, Illinois. You know, a little farming community, you know, no school, no nothing, just, you know, blink and gone. Yeah, it's real country. I think they do have a post office. Yeah, post office about big. Is that right? I shouldn't be talking about that town. I'm sorry. I better get it. Well, anyway, that's a good one, though. You moved to Macon. You did move up, though. Yeah, you did. Cause what do they have in Macon? Do they have a grocery store in Macon? For real? Man, okay. But anyway, Jesus from a little town like, it would be like Booty, Illinois. Didn't have no farming community. They didn't really have anything spectacular. So you can understand how these people would look at him. This guy coming and talking about a rich man and all that stuff. He comes from a little small farming town. He don't even know nothing about riches. And yet he got a robe on that they can't even wear. One of the most, what I want to call it, spectacular robe ever woven. Because the robe didn't have no seam. And I'm still trying to figure out, how can you weave a robe without seams? That means that God had to give somebody some wisdom back then and took it back. because I don't know how you can do it. Whoever did it, but just like when Moses built the tabernacle, God always had somebody in there who knew how to work with gold, work with the different metals, know how to do artifacts. So I'm sure that when God needed that, he had somebody for that too. That's the way God is. What God needs, he got somebody to fulfill that. You never had to worry about him getting the job done, because God has never been handicapped at all. He always know how to get the job done. Always have the people to do the job. They may show up just for a minute. You know, people hungry. God got a boy. Gonna get the job done for all the people. I don't think it was there by accident. See, the more and more I begin to read about God, I realize that God is always involved in our lives, even when we think he's not. Nothing in our lives catches God by surprise. I don't think he got to the place and to feed the 5,000, then wonder where we're going to get the food from. He already knew. He really did. He was trying to help us, a situational teaching here. He got disciples here. They came on a job unprepared to stay all day. They wanted a 15-minute sermonette. Jesus gets to teaching. He goes longer than I do. He teach them till they starving. But he knows he can't leave them like that. But I think he did that to show his disciples his provision, what he could do. Because he asked the question, anybody got some bread? Anybody got lunch? Man, we ain't got none. If we did have it, we ain't got enough. Isn't that usually what we say? Ain't that the reason why sometimes you can't come eat with me, because I ain't got enough? You know what I'm saying? We don't have enough. And that's not enough for everybody. But he was trying to show them, if you give me what you have, everybody will be fed. Give me what you got. And you'll be reluctant to give, especially when it gets down to the small part. 2 little pennies. That's hard to put in the plate there. But yet, Jesus looks at it and says, this woman who have put these 2 little pennies in has given more than everybody. Because you got to remember how God values his purpose in your life, not in somebody else's. I've heard people make excuses, say, God, Bro Wilson, I can't give like everybody else. God never asked you to ever give like somebody else. Never. He only asks you to do what he has told you to do. I never look. I've been in them conferences where guys want to get on the stage and show their hands because they were able to give $10,000. I ain't trying to get on stage. If I give you $10,000, then God done spoke to me. Right? God has really spoke to me. If we go to meetings and conferences, and they'll say, man, we need to raise some money. How many of y'all give $10,000? I remember I was in a meeting one time, man, and of course it's packed out. And if you're giving $10,000, you got to stand up, and then you got to come up there and stand in line, and you making everybody else has got $1 over here feeling bad. Then they'll come down. Well, who got 5? Who got 1,000? Well, when they say 100, you probably get up and kind of sneak up a little bit, give them 100. And then they finally say, okay, who got anything? Well, you're so embarrassed now, you're not going to even make an attempt to make a move. I've never liked that, because that's not the way God operates. He knows what everybody is capable of doing. And most people put pressure on themselves to do what they can't do, because God really didn't call them to do that. Praise God. And so here they look at Jesus knowing that he is not really supporting the ideas of their blessings. Even though they're legally right, They are scripturally right. Because God promised them blessings on top of blessings. If you do this, then I'm going to do this. And so they felt like once they started getting blessings, their focus and belief anymore was not on God anymore. But it was on their idea of God, because they had already said, I'm blessed and I'm saved, because all you got to do is look at what I got will tell you who I am. Jesus came to debunk all that. So he stressed not what they had, their theology that they had among them. He wasn't stressing that, because Jesus came to give them a new mentality. He wanted them to understand what blessings were for. He wanted them to understand that, yes, you are blessed. But his blessings should open our eyes to how we can be a blessing. It should not be, I'm blessed, God bless us for, and no more. Should never be that. And I know, growing up rough like me, in that poverty state, you know what I say? I got mine. They need to learn how to get theirs. I worked hard for mine, and they need to do the same thing. Now, I ain't going to lie. I do have some problems in that area. I do have some problems. And God's going to have to help me with a lot of this right here. Because I did read in his word one place where it said, if a man don't work, he shouldn't eat. Did you read that? I had a deacon from a Baptist church, and he was going back and forth with me a little bit, and he was making some statements about, the government ought to give all the poor people and everything like that. And I said, I can understand where you're coming from, but I'm going to tell you right now, I kind of hold to that one principle he said. If you don't work as a man, I'm not sure you should be eating. Because you know what'll drive a man to work? Hungry stomach. When I woke up hungry, it made me go get a job. I walked the streets of El Dorado begging to get me a job. Now, if a man is not capable of working, I understand that. But you know what bothers me? When I go to places and I look down here and I see all these grown men sitting outside, talking, doing absolutely nothing, and just eating free food. And then we say, well, we're doing a Christian duty. Sometimes I think that we may be overstepping some things. We're not inspiring them to do what they need to do. See, I'm almost like Russian. I have more like a Russian mind. I want to give you a fishing pole, fishing line, and a hook. Most of us are Americanized. We just rather give you some fish we caught so you don't have to learn how to fish. But I want to give you a pole, fishing line, and a hook. Because if I can teach you how to fish, you'll learn how to live. And you'll make it better if you learn how to do it. We take incentive away from people to learn because we're giving them and giving them and giving them, and they just keep expecting, and they never achieve anything. Now, I know that don't even sound almost Christian to it. Well, okay, I'm going to say like Paul said, the Lord didn't say that. That was me. Okay, I'm going to tell you that's the way I feel, and I think that God would have to help me. I'm not saying that every person that's not working needs to work. Some people can't work. Man, I see too many people. If you can walk 5 miles over this city, there's a job for you. Yeah, there's a job. Anyway, let me get off of that. That may help me, that may make me lose more friends. So they was enjoying the finer things of life, like everybody. Who don't want to enjoy the finer things of life? Tell me one human being that's born in this world don't want to enjoy the finer things of life. Of course, I desire not as much now because, I had a chance to taste some finer things of life. It didn't change nothing. I still like fried chicken. I still got more chicken in my refrigerator now than anything else. So I don't want them to go up on chicken prices to move me away from it. But I like chicken. Love chicken. But I do like other things besides chicken. But that's not what I live for. I don't eat it every day. I don't try to eat it every day. Matter of fact, I don't even try. I learned in these last few years how to eat. I have just learned in all these years how to eat. I finally realized that I quit going to buffets because I don't need a buffet. That ain't good for me. If food is my weakness, why would I go to a buffet? Now that I have trained myself to eat, not till I feel it here. I don't want to feel it on my tonsils. I don't want to fall back from the table and do this. I just want to eat enough for strength. These are things that God began to teach me. Because there's thousands of people saying, man, I need to go on a diet. Well, eat with a shovel. You won't pick it up that often. Push away from the plate. There's a lot of things that God said was a sin. We don't call them sin. He says, if I make myself a glutton, you need to commit suicide at the dining room table. He said, put a knife to my throat. Let me get off of that. I just feel like sometimes because we are so overly indulged in the things that we think are the finer things of life, it's costing us our health. It's like in the beginning, we're eating ourselves to death. I believe unhealthy eating is just like sinning. It creates problems. So Jesus wanted to talk about a lifestyle because he's looking at this rich man. It's not like I said, he's looking at this man's lifestyle. It's not like you sinned because you made money. You didn't sin because you achieved. But it's what we do after we achieve. After we made it, what are we thinking about now? Well, is it all about us now? So he concluded that this rich man was more self-indulgent. Everything he done was for him. His clothing, his underwear, everything. The splendor of his food, ate the best of the best. And here's Lazarus contrasted to that. All he wanted was just some crumbs. All he wanted was to have the dogs to lick his sores. All he wanted in his life. Now, I don't know whose fault that was. But that's a lot of things in life that we don't know what God is doing. This is what I said earlier in the lesson. We don't know what God is doing in half the things that we see every day. You may see some things that is deplorable to you. Like that rich man. He probably seen that guy out at his gate every day. I know he did. Stepped over him every day. And to him, he probably was having that Americanized idea like I have. I don't know why you don't get him, go get you a job or something. What you laying here? What's you at my gate for? You know how I got mine? I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. not knowing that if you got any wealth at all, God gave you the strength to get it. You know what I'm saying? He gave you the strength. So here he says, he waiting for hand-me-down, crumbs, all this stuff. And then the Bible said, man, and in his life, he received nothing but evil. But now, after that life, he received the best. The man in this parable got his best. And at the end of his life, he couldn't even buy that which was free. Everything he had amassed, he couldn't take with him. This is what I really believe with all my heart today. I already know that ain't nothing you're taking out of here with you. There is not one thing you can take out. All the money in the world can't buy you 1 minute. Can't even buy you a second. All your money can't even buy you not another hour. So, he had all them sore, untreated, and the only Medicare program he was under was dog care. And yet, they both died. The situation, you would never thought that guy who walked around every day and told everybody how blessed he was. Look how God is blessing me. Who would ever thought? See, a lot of things we see on this side, you may not see on the next side. Because he said, look how blessed we are. We know that we belong to God because we're so blessed. And yet God's attention was more on that poor man than the rich man. Yet he saw both. A lot of times I mentioned early in the ministry, I remember telling the church, because we always want to pray about people's action. And sometimes we're just praying for the wrong thing. Because most of the time, their action, God is not looking at that. He's looking at how you react to their action. What did you do? When I say in Matthew chapter 5 or 6, when he talked about when they come and want to sue you and all that kind of stuff, he said, agree with your adversary while you're in the way, lest they take you to the courts and then to the officers and all that kind of stuff. You see, he's talking about defusing situations, not escalating. Agree with him. God said, you stupid. Okay? Because then if I can't change what he thinks about me, can you? If a guy says, Brother Pope, you ain't got no sense, are you going to sit there and try to show him all the sense you got? He ain't going to change his mind. If he thought you was crazy when you showed up, when you get through talking, he going to still think you're crazy. I found that out. I used to tell my son, do not argue with a fool. Because if you argue with a fool, you have to become a fool to argue with one. Simple. You can't answer a fool without looking like one. So Jesus understood that. He never argued with him. He laid it out there. But anyway, the rich man looking for mercy, did he give any? There's so many scriptures in this Bible that sometimes almost frighten me when I think that somehow we don't think God is serious about them. And things like showing that poor man mercy. It didn't say. Evidently he didn't. And if he did, he wasn't dropping but crumbs. I don't even know how you could do that. I don't know how you can do that. I really know me. I may be hard, but I ain't that hard. I may be cold, but I ain't that cold. I just can't really do that. I was in San Francisco one time. They had a dude laying out here on the sidewalk, man. Oh, Lord. And he was a mess. And I just bought me one of them Peking ducks. And I was embarrassing my wife because I was eating it walking down the street, and she thought I should be sitting at the table. But they put it in a box, and we were just walking, so I was eating the duck. And this dude was down here talking about he was hungry. But I gave him that whole box, well, what I had left in that box of duck. I gave it to him. My wife said, "You gave him that duck? Well, he's hungry. No way I'm going to be able to eat the rest of that duck." Knowing this man down here like this, say he was a vet, one leg. No, he may have been pulling a scam. He probably was, partially, but I can't. How do you do that? How can you do that? And see, that's a play on words. You notice what he called it, the bowels of mercy? That is so profound that most people never catch what he just said. He said, shut up your bowels of mercy. See, mercy is what God gives to everybody. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, you obtained mercy, even though some of us don't realize we did, but you did. You're living in his mercy every day. And the only way you stop receiving it, you stop giving it. But he used the term bow because without bowel movement, you die. Period. You'll die. That's one thing God gave common to every person. We have to get rid of stuff. That's mercy. Gets rid of stuff that will kill you. That's the mercy of God. And when you stop giving that to people, you kill your own self. Maybe not right now. But when you'll need it, it won't be there. That's that man, when he was down there, looking up, you know what he wanted? Something he had never given. Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have mercy on me. I met a guy in the hospital one time dying of cancer. I don't know what that man done in his life, but I have never seen any man in my whole life ever suffer like that in my life. I had never seen anybody screamed and hollered so bad and was kept asking, God, what have I done for you to treat me like this? He literally spitting up part of his lungs and things. He was dying of cancer. He was in much pain. They gave him one of them shots. That shot will last about 5 minutes, which should have knocked out a mule. And I'm saying, Lord, I don't know whether he forgot to show somebody some mercy or what. But I find it hard for someone to cry so hard for mercy and can't get it. If I'm ever going to err, I'm going to err on the side of mercy. I'd rather err on that side than any other side. But anyway, I think that what this parable is more about is the thing that we give attention to. The priorities of God. The things that Jesus died for. I think we need to come back and realize what's the most important thing, the priorities of God, not of us. We have culturalized the gospel. We have almost secularized the gospel because we're trying to fit them all together, or separate them completely. Well, basically, we don't really want to bring them together. We want to separate them. And this is how we do it. You see, in church, if we go to church, that means that we're supposed to come, praise the Lord, love everybody, but when we leave church, then we secularize our gospel. And then all of a sudden, it's not praise the Lord. I hate my boss. I don't like what they're doing to me. They worked me too hard today. We forget. See, what we are is what we are. We're not a Christian on Sunday. And then we become secular on Monday. Because I got to go to this job, man. I got to go out here, man. Fight with these people. Fight? What do you mean you got to fight with the people? Oh, I just hate my job. Who are you working for? You know, last I read, he said about that. He said, whatever you're doing, do it as unto the Lord. So who are you working for? But see, when you secularize your life, you'll believe that you're working for the man. But when you realize who's in you, now you're going to realize that I'm no longer working for them. Everything I do is unto him and his glory. Glad to see you, Dr. Booker. Is there any comment or statement that you got me? Statement? Go ahead.